This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting episode that we are covering here on the Ultimate Global Podcast. And in this episode, I'm being joined by Ernie Encinas from LMS 365. He's the head of technical and professional services at LMS 365, which is the only LMS integrated into Microsoft 365 and Teams. Um, and he's got a very interesting journey of how he's kind of navigated into the tech industry because he wasn't working before in this industry, but he kind of paved his way over the last few years from a different area completely. So, Ernie, first of all, welcome to the podcast. And do you want to quick start with a quick introduction about yourself?
Sure, why not? My name's Ernie Encinas, and I have been with basically the LMS 365 product for over 10 years. So like you were saying, I basically started from the bottom as far as not knowing what SharePoint was or LMS 365, and came to where I'm at today, which is like managing 5 people in my team now.
Yep, and I think that's very interesting, Ernie, because a lot of people who might be listening to you who are not in tech industry at the moment, but might be looking at it as an alternative solution in the near future. What are some of the things that you have seen which are really interesting while you joined this industry? If you have to guide to those people who are wanting to enter into this space.
Sure, that's a great question. Some of the interesting things that I've seen is basically going from the earlier times of on-premise, where our software was on-premise, right? And how different it was relying on servers, right? All our customers had servers, and our product lived essentially on servers, to where we're at today, where now we're in the cloud version, and now with this AI thing, as soon as I caught a wind of this AI thing, I've just gone nuts as far as like wanting to learn everything about it. Chat GPT, Mid Journey, ideogram. So all these different things that are now possible with AI. It's just amazing to see like what's possible now compared to what was possible 10 years ago.
And what was your biggest learning or takeaway in the first few months? Because you came from a very different background. I can imagine people who are coming from construction or hospitality or different industries into tech. It's a different ball game altogether. Of course, if you have been in the same kind of department, might be similar job function for you, but it's an altogether different industry to work in.
Definitely, for me myself, being that I had come from the military before this job, so I actually spent 22 years in the Navy, the U.S. Navy, and I was actually a leader within the Navy, but also my main job was a musician. I was a Navy musician, so the only type of technology that I was exposed to was essentially a system that we had in the Navy called uh, defense travel system. So that was a software that we used for basically scheduling travel, reimbursements, that expenses. So that's the type of technology that I had in the Navy. So I've always been passionate about technology. I just never had an opportunity to learn so much that I did. So when I joined the original company, not LMS 365 e-learning force, but I was basically a consultant, and I did travel for the military. I still ended up doing that job when I retired from the Navy into my first civilian position, I want to say. I was a lead defense travel administrator doing that job. So that position only lasted about 6 months, right? And then I was asked if I wanted to join the IT department, technology services, and that I would basically learn this software from the bottom up. So I immediately jumped at that because I've always been very passionate about softwares, like new softwares and learning something new. So for me, being able to learn SharePoint, learn SharePoint LMS, it was very exciting for me. It was something that I was going to learn from the beginning, and I got to experience so many great things of learning the product, what worked, what didn't work, and that kind of carried over into just being the entry level guy that was learning just how to the product, to where immediately the company needed an LMS trainer. And our trainer that we had at the time was not a very good trainer, so uh, they were looking for a trainer, and I immediately jumped at this position because I would get to train customers in using our product. So that was very, very exciting for me during that time, just to kind of like dive into it and what they say, hit the ground running, right? Whereas immediately I learned this software and I was very excited and passionate to show customers how to use this product.
That's really interesting. And I think that is kind of the driver for you because you were really passionate towards trying something out, trying something new. But then when you entered as well, you kind of drove your passion into the job because it was a new job for you. And I think this is a lesson for people who join new. Need to give yourself some time to adjust in a new industry, but have the passion always there for what you are doing. Otherwise, you might lose interest after a while, and then you might say, this industry is not for me, and then you will just keep on switching between industries without finding any relevant interest in any of them. And I think that's important to give yourself some time to adjust and pace up with the new company as well. Passing on to you, George, do you have any questions for our special guest from America today?
Yes. This is going to be a question that I'm going to be asking a lot, I reckon, in the next few months, if not years. I'm interested to get your thoughts on AI and chat. I come from sales, marketing, business development area. I deal with people that actually understand the processes that they're engaged to do. My great concern with AI and chat is that anybody that can ask the right sort of a question gets an answer back, but it doesn't really tell me whether you know what the hell you're talking about. How do you see that impacting? Why do I necessarily need, for example, to have LMS 365 to be teaching my staff whatever, if my staff can then just go off and run off to ChatGPT or things of that nature? So how do you see it impacting? For me, as a business coach and advisor, there will be people that think, well, I don't need to employ George because I can go and ask Chat.
Yes, and I get that question a lot actually from a lot of customers, and not only customers but friends, right? Everybody's kind of scared of this whole AI thing. Is it going to replace me? Is it going to? And I've actually seen this from so many different areas, right? Job areas, like for example, AI in music, right? The whole thing with being a musician, and I didn't mention that I've been a musician since I was 9 years old. So that's something that I've always also done, is played music. And now with this AI thing, that's one of the things that's been brought up, is like, how much do you want to use AI for like writing lyrics, for writing melodies, for writing things? And I think it's just honestly, personally, I feel it's more like a starting point just for motivation to give you ideas. It's not something that you should 100% rely on for your final answer, right? When some of my most complex scenarios that I've had working in this industry of tech services and our LMS has been responding to a customer that's maybe not satisfied or with the level of service or the software, things like that. So I've kind of used ChatGPT in the past just to kind of formulate my ideas of like, how should I respond to this type of customer that's not happy with that, right? And it just like gives me ideas for that, not necessarily like word for word I'm using it. But to answer your question, George, with LMS 365, the idea is more to help the administrator with formulating training. Like, I want to create training for Power BI, help me put together a lesson based on the information that I already have. So it's really organizing it as well. I've used ChatGPT just to organize kind of a lesson, a curriculum, where it kind of formulates it for me, right? Without me having to think about it too much. But I still have to go in there and change the wording, and so that it's not 100% AI, right? ChatGPT. So hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, I think I can see how it works with those that are already knowledgeable and skilled in the art of whatever it is they're practicing. I recently worked with a group of young people who used chat AI, whatever, to put together a package. There's a group of 6 or 8 of them. I've done this sort of mentoring previously, and I've probably done a total of, I would think, 20 teams now over the last 4 or 5 years. This is the first team where I would not actually engage any of those people after the event. And I didn't feel connected to those people after the event because I didn't actually see who you were, what you think, and what you're doing. It was a very interesting experience. Whereas in that same event, I've met a number of uni students that I have then gone on to be associated with afterwards because I could see who they were and what they were about. And I saw that as much from their successes as their faults. So my concern for tech industry and things like that is whether or not we're going to be encouraging people to know how to use a calculator but not understand mathematics.
Definitely. It's something that it makes it very difficult, right? For educators, for example, my wife of 20 years, she's been teaching elementary school for like 12, 13 years. I think it might be more than that. And nowadays, for a student to be able to enter something in ChatGPT that's going to give them the answer, it's like, does the student really know the information, or they're just cheating using ChatGPT, right? It's got to be something where you draw the line. It's like, you got to know, okay, this was not the student, right?
Yeah, well, you would probably be aware through your wife. My ex-wife was a teacher, and every now and again she would meet students that had been coached by specific colleges that would get your child into a particular high school. The child had no full understanding of what it was. They were just coached how to answer a series of questions, and then they'd get into the particular high school and fail miserably. And I wonder where that puts us in the tech industry. How do you assess a young up and coming, unless it's going to be purely you're going to have to watch them do it in front of your eyes, because getting them to answer a series of questions on how you'd solve this or how you'd solve that, where do you determine whether Sarab actually knows it? And I used AI to answer the thing in submitting my our joint applications for a job.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. George was saying that basically you're going to have to see the person in action. And I've always been about, ever since I was in the military and then I started in this new industry, it's always been about hands-on. And that's all the customers that I've ever trained. Most of them enjoy hands-on type of training where they get to actually do the actual work, right? So if I ever had and I have had to train a couple new consultants, right? And they came more from the support side, But when it came into my team, it was kind of, I wanted them to shadow me to see what I was doing in my calls with customers. And it was kind of something that I was their mentor. They were seeing how I answered a customer, how I did that. Now, I probably have noticed an improvement in some of the communications they've had with customers. Their writing skills have improved, right? I'm not saying that the AI is helping them, but I'm saying maybe it's improving maybe some of their correspondence, right? And I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with that as long as it doesn't come across too tech booky, where it's something that's not really genuine like them coming from them.
Yep. And I think this is a very interesting space, Ernie, because I also keep on talking to a lot of customers here of LMS 365. And it's always that discussion where people start getting scared that, oh, if this comes out, what happens to our jobs? And then it's more of a game of explanation where you have to tell them that it's not here to replace your job, it's there to help you, and possibly it's your time to upskill yourself so that you can do something else in that job domain itself. So even if you're an HR administrator, your job is not getting replaced, but some part of it is being done by the AI. So you need to look at the what else can we do to make your job more productive. And I think it's really making the job more productive for people rather than diminishing it. And I think that's something which needs to be articulated in the right way to the people, because otherwise, people can get scared easily and they might start thinking, oh, in the next 5 years, I need to start looking at something else because my job is just going away.
Yeah, honestly, I just think with AI, it's just making our lives so much easier. Thinking of the old days, like your vehicle that you drive, right, where it has a navigation system built into it, warning detections, things like that. In the past, it might have been your wife that's reading the map, telling you where to go, and left, right. Hey, there's a car, watch out. It's just making our lives so much better now with the computer systems and the AI built into our vehicles that it's helping us, right? I'm not replacing my wife. I'm just giving her a break.
So what do you see from the technology industry perspective as things that companies should be thinking about to protect themselves or enhance the experience with AI and chat? For example, I've forgotten the gentleman's name, but there was a chap from America who shouted as loud as he could for as long as he could that we don't have enough rules set up for the World Wide Web before we let this thing get out of the box. He was hailed down as being a scaremonger and a this and a this, and now he's hailed as the visionary that everybody should have listened to, because we've got the black web, we've got the porn industry, we've got all the other things. So within this area, do you think there's things that companies need to, companies or individuals for that matter, need to consider to enhance their experience with AI, and B, protect them in areas? Has anything jumped out at you at this stage?
Not necessarily. I would say, and I think in all those platforms, whatever you're using for your AI, right? It always there's actually a disclaimer on there that says that everything's not going to be correct, right? The information that's in there is not 100% accurate, right? So it's just going to be one of the things that every company is going to use AI in different ways, right? It's just up to the company to establish guidelines of how is a company going to use AI, right? I've heard some stories from friends and colleagues where their company doesn't allow AI within the organization. And I don't know if it's a thing of the unknown, the uncertainties of what is AI and how is it going to impact us? How is it going to affect us? But I think once companies establish guidelines of how their employees will be using AI in what fashion, right? It's going to be something that it's still kind of undetermined. It's such a new thing that I could see security being one of the things that's like, okay, how secure are we when we're accessing this AI website? Do we need to block it? Do we have to put security measures? So I think those are the types of things that a company will have to kind of think about before we kind of just allow our employees to access AI, different AI platforms.
Over to you, Saurabh.
Yep, sorry for that. That's the problem when you have with technology if you're working from home. Just a question for you, Ernie. When you're working from the office, most of the times my internet is pretty stable, but the disadvantage is that when I have to interview someone from the America, I have to get up early, and I'm not an early morning person. So I can't rush to the office so early, so I have to interview people from my house, and then you have to bear the disadvantages of a bad internet in the morning. Well, Ernie, now in terms of coming back to the initial discussion that we were having of how you navigated into the tech industry, what are some of the other soft skills other than the hard skills? There are a lot of tech skills you must have gone through or learned, but are there any soft skills which you found pretty relevant from the military to the tech industry that you think are pretty much applicable? Because a lot of the times people come from backgrounds like sports. Sports teaches people a lot of things because you learn how to become a leader, you learn how to manage a team of people, you learn team building skills. So were there any things that you took away from the military and that you really applied in the tech space when it comes to soft skills?
Oh, most definitely. One of the things that I learned from the very beginning in military is just kind of how to network, for one thing, kind of networking with other people, other departments, right? And then the other thing that I learned for sure was how to have patience, right? I mean, when you're dealing with somebody that is either very young in experience, or maybe somebody on the other spectrum where they're a lot older and they don't know how to navigate around a computer, for example. It's just being patient and understanding that not everybody learns the same way, right? So that's one of the things I took away from the military. And 22 years is a long time for military. I could say from when I first joined at 18, I was I wasn't very disciplined, let's say, right? The whole thing with respecting my leaders wasn't a thing that I adapted to quickly. I grew up in Los Angeles, California, and just my environment that I lived in, I didn't respect like authority sometimes. And so that was one of the hard things for me getting into the military, was just kind of adapting and learning to respect my leaders, and that there's a pecking order. There's a food chain, right? Chain of command. So for me, that was one of the things that coming into and it was a big change for me, because I came from working somewhere where I saw somebody face to face. I had to be with my colleagues. I had to lead my people. They were in front of me. I could go to lunch with them, right? To now all of a sudden everything was remote. I was doing it via Teams, through a webcam, and that became a lot more difficult for me to manage a team that's kind of over the internet, right? So it's like I had to kind of adjust some of my leadership style to be able to still take care of my team, but also be a good manager, right? I was always taught lead by example, right? So lead by example. So that was one of the things that I always have done, is like trying to lead by example, and also knowing that there's always going to be, like, if you're a leader of a team, you're going to have experts in your team. So not always assuming that you're going to know everything, right? You're going to 100% be the expert in X, Y, and Z. No, you're leading. I always like to think of myself as a coach, baseball coach. I'm a big baseball fan. And I like to think myself as a coach, the manager of the team. And I have my all-stars on my team. I'm managing them, yes, but they're all my all-stars. I have this guy that's a really good pitcher. This guy's a good hitter. That's kind of how I like to think of my consultant team. They all have their own superpowers, right? Their skills.
Great. Do you have any further questions, George?
It's interesting you brought up the military. I only spent a couple of years in the cadets when I was at high school, but the thing that I found interesting just in that short engagement with it was the structure and the strategy. And as Saurabh knows, strategy is a huge part of who I am and what I do. I was very strategic from a very young age, even before I understood what being strategic was about. But the part that I've often reflected back on, and I look at many other aspects of news stories that I hear about military and things like that. It teaches an enormous amount about self-respect and understanding chain of command and things like that. But then when I started running businesses and managing teams, I constantly question, where does it fit in where there's the unequivocal accepting of the order from above versus in business where you actually want anybody on the team to say, hey, boss, I think you're wrong. Here's a better way of doing it. So having spent as long as you did in one area and now where you are in this area, have you got a comment on that?
I do. So I think it's slightly different, obviously, when you're in the military setting, that as a leader, sometimes you have to make those quick decisions and those best decisions on the fly because it could impact safety, lives of others. So in those instances, you got to be the leader, the one that says, no, we're going to go this way because it's safer. And our radar says we should go do this, X, Y, and Z. Whereas now in the tech industry, I like the whole part of everybody in the team contributing. Like I might lay out an idea and say, hey team, what do you think about the idea of doing this, implementing it this way? And then just hearing their feedback and them saying, well, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? At the end of the day, I'm still going to make the final decision of what I feel is best for the team, for the company, right? But yeah, that's the main thing I would say is the difference is that military is going to be slightly different, obviously, when you have to make those decisions as a leader, right?
Thank you.
I really enjoyed the comparison that you did with baseball. And a lot of the times, when we try to compare with different sports, you learn a lot on how to manage teams, as I was telling you before. And I think a few days before, we were having this discussion within our team as well on how we can apply some of those sports rules as a team code of conduct, where every team member follows certain team rules on the basis of what you learn from different sports. So it can be, if you're wrong, hold yourself accountable and raise your hand that I'm wrong in this case. Things like that, which really are important for team harmony at times. And I've kind of learned a lot of things recently as well, which is pretty essential, I would say. But Ernie, thank you so much for your time today. I think this has been a really interesting episode for people who might be listening to it from an outsider's perspective and they want to join tech industry in the near future. I'm sure you've added a lot of insights and new perspectives into that.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.